All right.
Can you take a look?
I'm taking a look. So here's what we've got mocked up. We threw a roller cam in here so it can't fall on a block. All this needs machined, so no biggie. Threw a points dizzy that I had on the ground here. And now, okay, that's exactly what I was hoping to see, the mesh. So you can see here, if he spins the gear, you can see how it turns. In fact, the dizzy probably comes down a hair further. Let me give it just a little more wiggle. It's probably right about there. And you can see where that is. Directly above. Okay, goodness gracious, Okay, so look at how that works. Now let's go into the other room for a moment and get something. I haven't shown this on purpose on film yet because I don't understand it. Bartley was driving up here the other day on that motor. Don't ignore all of that. In fact, this is, you know, what a typical gear would look like. See, you can see the wear pattern. This is what happened on this gear. Whoop, I forgot. It's not attached to the dizzy anymore. Okay. This is what happened here. And we don't know why. We don't understand what happened here. But you can clearly see, here, I'm going to go out in the sun because it may be that difficult for you to clearly see. You can clearly see that tooth, and that tooth. That's a line there that broke. And you can see it's got a grain pattern to it. But outside of that, when you look at the teeth, you see normal, typical wear. This is a brand new gear, specified by both MSD and Lunati. This is the, I think it was an 8351 or an 8361. I don't know, it was $100. This is a $100 gear, I think, according to my records. And it was brand new. Now, the distributor was not brand new, but this was. So this is the melanized gear to work with any camshaft. But particularly with this billet cam, or well, actually I don't think this one was billet. I think this is just a roller, which means it's still steel. So how did those break? I understand how this happened. You know, the cam was still spinning, so it machined it. You know, as soon as that dizzy stopped, the cam kept going because the car was moving and it's a manual. So as the engine wore down, the cam ground that down. I don't have good video of the teeth on the cam, but we will next spring. We'll throw a USB camera down in there and really take a look. But every time we bumped it over, I could get 3 different distributors to mesh with no problem. So we called that good. At this point, I don't really understand how that failed. And for anyone who's going to say, well, you must have had it on upside down, because I know I've seen that before. No, obviously not. Look at how the gear is worn. Obviously that was incorrectly, or it would have barely grabbed just the tip. So that's not it. So I'm not sure, because I see no unusual wear. All the rest of the teeth, I hope that's coming out clear. The wear is exactly what I would expect. The only thing I can come up with here is a metallurgical issue, that when they hardened this, there was a crack or a stress fracture. And that's what I'm thinking when you see, you know, anybody who sits and watches the Forged in Fire knows that when you see that large grain like that, that's always an issue. So why did that fail? What damage did it do? The engine was running, so we figure any damage is already done. We put that HEI in there, which does have a softer iron gear on it, so it's not going to live forever. It'll turn to a knife edge. We will order a new gear, and honestly, at this point, we may just replace the whole distributor. This thing's just been cursed. But, you know, I took 3 different points distributors and slid in there, and they always meshed perfect. So if there is any damage to the cam gear, it's not much. It meshes fine, it turns fine. So, oh, I forgot the light. Let me grab a light. Always keep your lights charged. All right, so when you look in here, so you can see that if a couple of the teeth on the distributor gear broke, you can see how the cam gear would keep spinning and machine them just like we see. And of course that also stopped the oil pump. So hopefully we don't have further damage. But on the upside, the engine quit running. I mean, that was it. That's all you could do. So I really hope that motor doesn't have to come back out. Either which way, talking about that motor, we've already replaced the Edelbrock fancy two-piece timing set, all its gaskets once already for leaking, and it's leaking again, which means we're just going to get rid of that expensive garbage and go back to stock stamped steel stuff and go from there, because those never fail. They may not look pretty, but they fail, or they don't fail. So at this point, I'm very, very, very disappointed. So yeah, so this particular distributor just has an iron gear on it, so that's not melanized. So when I pull this back out, and this is also a big roller, so same thing that he's got now, except this one's huge. So you can see as we're slowly coming out that last cam bearing, you can see on here that, you know, I'm just not sure what happened. Now this particular cam has what looks like an iron gear. It looks like that may have been resized and placed. So yeah, and you can see the wear on the cam gear is pretty minimal on this cam, but you can see it is there. Well, I hope you guys can see there is wear, but it's very minimal. And yet the cam that was originally mated to this camshaft, its teeth were completely gone because they were just standard. It was one of the original issues with the motor. Anyway, that's neither here nor there right now. So as we look at that, I'm very hopeful that when we put a camera down there next year, that there's no damage here and that we're able to recover most of that metal. You can see where that had to have fallen with the web spinning on the number 7 and number 8. That metal has to be in the pan. It just has no other place it can be. It has to be in the pan. The engine, when we put the HEI in it, ran fine, no smoking, so it's not like metal got in and scored a bore or got in and broke a ring or anything. I'm not sure how it could have, but you know, you always worry about things like that. So that was one of the things I wanted to show, explaining the weirdest distributor gear failure I've ever seen. Normally you just see them, they knife edge, they start wearing until they become a point, and you see it because it becomes spark scatter everywhere. You know, you really see it when you're trying to time it and the spark is jumping. That's either going to be a worn distributor gear or a worn timing chain or both. That's the only way that can happen because of the way they're mechanically bound to each other. So yeah, God, that's so weird and frustrating. I tell you, everything that you buy now is suspect. Everything you buy now is garbage.